Mini episode 368 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.info.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode number 368. You've got FDH Lounge dignitaries Rick Morris and Kyle Ross here to break down the NFL divisional round of the playoffs. We've been with you all football season, taking a look at it, breaking it down. My picks last week, I was 2-2 on them. I did get up and go out a 1,000-star gold-plated lock of the millennium last week. That one hit 1-0 for the week. So my picks for the year, 123, 128, and 9 on all the games, 24, 27, and 1 on my big three plays, and on my lock plays, 9, 8, and 1, which I told you off here, Kyle, you were going to laugh when I said this. Since I've hit my last 6 lock plays in a row to climb just over profitability, I'm done for the year. I hadn't done any lock picks going into the playoffs. I am done. I am quitting with my tail between my legs. 9, 8, and 1 for the year. Let me break down the numbers here. If anybody played $1 million on each of my games, then they would be clear an entire $200,000 at the end of the season. You're welcome for that 6 figures, ladies and gentlemen.
I'll tell you what, spoken like a true sports handicapper there, Ricky. And, very, very Berman-esque, too. I think when your boy Boomer included his CFL picks in last year's record, which I actually thought was kind of funny by his unusually low standards. So,
yes.
But as always, a pleasure to be on the program, Ricky. Hello. It's great to be with you again. And,
great to have you.
You know, all year long we heard about the good Andy Dalton against the bad Andy Dalton. This week you're getting the good Kyle Ross. Last week I was a little hot and bothered, had some issues with the weather, a little off by game. This week I am dialed in. I am elite. I'm going to give an elite performance this week.
Well, you were at 2-0-1 or possibly 3-0, depending on which lines you were using last week. So still a very good week for you.
Let's be fair. It'd be more likely 2-1 than 3-0 with the Green Bay game. We did talk about the Green Bay game, how it would almost certainly go to 3. It did about 5 seconds, I think, after we got off the air, and that's the push. We should talk about these games the way they fell. The one game that both of us won on without question was the Saints over the Eagles. We'll get to that momentarily, I believe. And then there was the issue of the Chiefs-Colts line, which really caught me by surprise, the move towards the end of the week. When we were on air, the Colts were getting, I think, 2.5 when we did the show, at the time of the show.
Yes.
And I had taken, the Chiefs were getting 2.5. There I go with those Chiefs and Colts, getting them mixed up again like last week. But I took the 2.5 with the Chiefs. They obviously would have covered that number, but I texted you right before the game, much to my surprise, they had actually been bet to the role of favorite. I think the closing line had them laying a 1.5, which of course meant they didn't cover, and your pick of the Colts would have won with that line. So results may vary on last week's selections. This week, we shall see. I really like 2 of the games. The other 2, I don't know. You may have to talk me into a side on those in the NFC half of the draw.
Okay. Well, we'll see how these all go. That Colts-Chiefs game last week, I told you off air that I actually missed the very thrilling comeback. Long story short, we've been getting buffeted by horrible weather here in Cleveland, and I've been very busy with any number of things. I had a narrow window to hit my stops of there are 2 close relatives I have. They're in nursing homes. I was like, okay, late Saturday afternoon feels like my window. So I did that. I was like, okay, this game's a blowout anyways. The second place I was at, I had my iPad mini with me, and I whip it out. I'm looking at it like, oh, my God, 45-44, look at what I missed. So, that was just one of those things.
I remember a few years back, I missed the Green Bay-Arizona game. If you remember that one, it went to overtime. It was Aaron Rodgers' first playoff game I think it wasn't the year Arizona went to the Super Bowl. I think it was the next year after that.
Right.
I missed that. That was a real wild game that looked like a blowout at half and became good after that. So, yeah, we all miss them, but hey, we're none the wiser. We all have other things to do sometimes. And but this week, I'll tell you what, best weekend of the year, I'm not going anywhere. This week. At least I don't think so.
Yeah, I'll probably catch all of it this week here. And I will say, I mean, I don't know how much of a trade-off it is for missing one of the greatest playoff comebacks in history, but I did get to hear a very, very amusing story about my grandpa's drinking buddy, Stosh, who was a leg breaker for Shondor Burns back in the day. So that was kind of funny. Very amusing story. Okay. Out of respect for the late Stosh, I will leave that one go on the specifics, maybe tell you off air if you want to hear it. In fact, I probably will because you will laugh. But,
okay. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, trust me. It's a lot more uplifting than anything Andy Reid offered, I'll tell you that much.
Probably, and in case he has any mobbed-up descendants, I better keep that one to myself. Tell you that off air. But we're going to one here at the opener. Again, we talked about this during the season, that clearly the four best teams in the NFC, as best as we could tell, were the top two teams in the NFC West and the NFC South, and they are paired up this weekend. It's going to be a couple of real barn burners, quite possibly here. The divisional round starts Saturday afternoon, 4:35 Eastern Time. The 12-5 Saints at the 13-3 Seahawks. I am upset to report that four-time FDH Lounge guest Kenny Albert will not be on this game with his crew. This is a pretty good crew that they have here, but I'm a homer for KA. A little sad he's not going to be on it. Kevin Burkhardt, John Lynch, and Aaron Andrews, the flavor of the moment team over at Fox, getting the call over Kenny Albert and company. So I don't sound too bitter, do I?
No. Something tells me it's not John Lynch. Something tells me it's not John Lynch that got him that gig. But that's just me.
Well, you could put Aaron Andrews with Kenny Albert's crew, and in fact, I think we would all prefer that anyways. But, again, I have to sound bitter because it's not like KA is going to on Twitter. If you follow his feed, he's nothing but a classy guy. He's only going to have good things to say about them. Somebody's got to vent on his behalf, and it might as well be me. But this game taking place at CenturyLink Field, the probably number one home field advantage in the NFL right now with that record-breaking crowd. And I had told you off air, something I had for each team here as I'm just kind of setting it up. Their rankings offensively and defensively in terms of yardage. Yardage is it's an imperfect measure of what a team can do, but it will tell you certain things here. As far as the run goes, the Saints 25th in the league against the run. Seahawks are 4th at stopping it. And the Saints are 19th at stopping the run, and the Seahawks tied for 7th. The Saints are 19th at stopping it. The Seahawks are 4th against the run, or 4th running the ball, and the Saints are 25th running it. The Saints are 2nd in terms of passing yardage, but unfortunately for them, the Seahawks are 1st at stopping it. Maybe the greatest strength-on-strength matchup that we see this weekend. You've got the Seahawks that are 26th in terms of passing. The Saints are 2nd at stopping it. Got to give credit to Rob Ryan on that one there, as reluctantly as it may be. That 26th in terms of passing yardage for Seattle, very, very deceiving, because that's not what they do. They could be chucking it more, and in fact, they probably will with Percy Harvin in there, but that's just not what they choose to do. Anybody that looks at that and thinks anything about Russell Wilson does so at their own peril.
Yeah, this is an interesting matchup. It's a regular season rematch. Seattle absolutely massacred New Orleans on a Monday night. I believe the final score is 34-7. It was one of those games that was almost over from the start. I believe Seattle had a fumble recovery, turned into a touchdown. It was 27-0 at halftime, if I remember the game. It just was not close. It was New Orleans' worst game of the season by far. I have every reason to believe that this week will be closer, but that is a big gap they're working to close. Now, they did get the proverbial monkey off the back with the road win last week. You and I both had them, and throughout that game, watching it at Philadelphia last week, my impression was that we were kind of right, that the better team was getting points. I know they needed the late field goal to pull out the win. Sean Payton did, by the way, a wonderful job of managing the clock down the stretch. Mike Tomlin, take notes. But all they get as a reward for winning the franchise's first ever road game in the playoffs, like you said, is a date at the hardest place for any road team to win, CenturyLink Field. I think the fact Seattle lost once during the regular season at home, taste their own blood a little bit, if you will, helps them. It'll allow them not to be too overconfident. I'm wussing out and not playing this game. I think it's going to be close to the number. It's going to be much closer than the regular season. Ultimately, I think Russell Wilson, who you referenced earlier, is going to be able to take advantage of a dinged-up Saints secondary. We didn't even talk about this last week. They're without Kenny Vaccaro, who on the defensive side of the ball was as good as any rookie in the league this year, I thought. So
Absolutely.
Seattle will advance. Seattle will advance to host the NFC Championship game. I just, especially given what we saw in the wild card round, every underdog either covered or pushed. And then, of course, it's been a real underdog year so far for football bettors. If you include college, the dog was 5-0 against the spread in the BCS game. So I wouldn't want to be caught laying the points here, but I do think Seattle advances. So that's my gutless analysis for the week.
Good point. The line right now is Seattle -8. It had opened at 9.5. And that's an excellent point about Kenny Vaccaro. As I'm throwing out the statistics here, that the Saints were second in the league against the pass, 194.1 yards per game given up in terms of passing yardage. But that was pretty much with him in there, and it is a little bit of a different story, and that's where some of the statistics can be a little bit skewed, much like, as we said, Seattle 26th in terms of passing yardage, but I don't think Pete Carroll is alarmed about that at all because it's not what they choose to do. It shows that Russell Wilson may have some opportunities there in terms of going to the air if he wants to, minus Kenny Vaccaro in that secondary. But ultimately, I do like Seattle to cover. I think they will in this game because it won't be as big of a blowout as it was. I think most of us can agree on that. It's not going to be 34-7 kind of a game. It's going to be a little bit closer as it was, ironically, 3 years ago, the infamous Sean Payton pregame speech of you could beat these guys wearing your flip-flops, where they went out there so overconfident against the 7-9 Seahawks team that, in retrospect, was clearly just taking its first steps to become what they are right now. We're here 3 years later, and ultimately Seattle has become that dominant team in the NFC. I think along with San Francisco, more on that later. But in this spot at home, this is what they've been playing for all year. And I will say something that was pointed out last week on the program by FDH Lounge guest NFL analyst Lex Luger when we were doing an overview of the entire playoffs. Seattle not completely invulnerable at home. You look at what Arizona did in December, and that's a good point. I don't know that they or we can be overconfident after that, but that just strikes me, Kyle, as the kind of loss that does nothing but good things going into the playoffs, because now they're not undefeated at home. Now they know they can lose there, and that knowledge sounds like the worst thing in the world for a New Orleans team trying to sneak up on them.
No, that's what I kind of said. I think it was good that they sort of tasted their own blood there, because had they gone through the regular season unbeaten, it would have been the second year in a row they'd done that, and I think everyone would have sort of just handed them the NFC championship. Oh, well, they never lose with Russell Wilson, a quarterback at home. Seattle Seahawks have won the NFC Championship, and they've been more prone to a letdown. Now, I will say this. If I'm Seattle, I'm a little scared because this is sort of the first time where the pressure's on them. Because of where they play in the Pacific Northwest, I always think of my dad in these kind of situations. He's probably seen the Seahawks play like 3 times in the last 2 years. They were on Monday Night Football twice this year, and, maybe the playoff game last year, I know they played 2. So I'm sure it's maybe a little more than 3, but you get my point, that they're a team that has sort of been able to dominate from afar. Now everyone's like, oh, okay, here's Seattle, oh, number 1 seed. Oh, okay, let's see how great this team is. And they're playing sort of the more known commodity. By the way, 62% of the wagers are on New Orleans in this game, plus the points, which I found sort of telling given Seattle's home dominance. The public sort of disregarding that. Now, New Orleans kind of a public team, like I said, the more known commodity. In the end, I just can't see Seattle losing this game at home. New Orleans, last week aside, does certainly play not as well on the road. There's no denying that. Tip your cap, they won in Philadelphia, but, you and I kind of had some reservations about the Eagles. The Seahawks are not the Eagles. Their defense is much better. I believe their secondary is the strongest unit of any individual unit in the sport today. Keep in mind they have 2 players suspended for substance abuse, and they're still the best unit of any unit in the sport. So that should just tell you how great Richard Sherman and the like are. So Seattle advances here. And you talked about Wilson maybe having some opportunities. He did take advantage of the few opportunities he was given in the first half in that regular season meeting. I remember he nailed a real long pass. There were, I think, at least 2 big passes he had in that first half of 60 or more yards. And then there's no Vaccaro, like we've mentioned already. So Seattle advances. I am being a chicken, though, and not playing this game.
Okay. And in terms of the suspensions, there is a reason that they've come to be known as the Seattle Seahawks. But, again, that's the kind of ship that Pete Carroll runs, going back to the USC days and the prescription pad for medical marijuana. So, his teams just roll in that outlaw style, I suppose. So,
Seattle Seahawks. I like that.
I wish I could claim ownership of that. But, again, the good ones borrow, the great ones steal. That's what it always comes down to. So that's what covers the first game here on Fox on Saturday. The second half of the doubleheader is over on CBS, 8:15 Eastern Time at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough. On the call for this one, CBS with the B team of Greg Gumbel, Dan Deerdorf. On the sidelines, Cleveland's own Allie LaForce. Swing! This game is going to be the 12-5 Colts at the 12-4 Patriots.
Wait a minute. Now, I, nor certainly any other red-blooded male in America, is not going to deny the beauty of Cleveland's own Allie LaForce there.
Absolutely.
But you're telling me she is now the number 2 sideline reporter for CBS?
Well, she got the Sun Bowl assignment. I saw her on that on New Year's Eve.
Yes. And did you watch her facilitate that particular halftime show?
Seemed like she did a pretty good job. I didn't watch all of it, but it seemed like she did a pretty good job.
Do you have ears?
Did I miss something?
Ricky, when that interplay with Vern Lundquist and Gary Danielson, that speaking back to the cavemen era, I thought.
All right, you clearly caught part of it I didn't catch.
Okay, it was texting on my buddy. It was reminiscent of Tia, the big player on the Bedford Auto Mile. Only people in Cleveland will understand that reference. But, I mean, God bless her. Wow, is she shot up the charts. God bless her. I mean, It's like my girlfriend said when we were watching. It was like my girlfriend said when we were watching it. Well, she is attractive. That I cannot dispute.
Well, here's the thing, though, and again, this is a side note, but still, CBS and NBC, I think they're using their cable personalities more so on the main networks to get them a little bit more familiar. She's got that, I think, nightly show with Doug Gottlieb. I don't know because I don't have the CBS Sports Network on my cable, but yeah, she's on there, so I think they're trying to get her a little bit more exposure. Nevertheless,
I don't blame them. I don't blame them. I don't blame them.
She's a winner.
Yes.
But,
she's better than Leslie Visser, I'll say that much.
Yeah. Well, she's definitely more the 21st century face of CBS, let's put it that way, than perhaps Leslie Visser. That would be a tactful way of putting it, uncharacteristically tactful for me. But New England is hosting here, the Colts there, favored by 7. It had been 7.5 at the open. As far as how these teams match up in terms of yardage, Colts are 20th in terms of running the football. The Patriots are 30th at stopping it. The Colts are 26th running the ball. Patriots are 9th at running the ball, and the Colts are 26th at stopping it. As far as the pass goes, Colts are 17th in terms of passing yardage. The Patriots are 18th at stopping it. Very interesting that these numbers here track up. Versus New England is 10th in terms of passing yardage, and the Colts are 13th at stopping it. So all 4 units there, the passing units for both teams and the passing defenses are between 10 and 18. Very interesting, more or less middle of the pack, regardless of what you would think of these teams coming in, that they're really kind of bunched up more towards one end or other of middle of the pack in terms of passing yardage.
Okay, let's take a step back here. And by the way, I'm going to build off what you just said. Don't think I'm disregarding it for 1 second, because the fact that they're kind of so seemingly even, trust me, I'm going to tie that into where I'm going. But let's take a step
Okay.
back first. Last week, miracle comeback by Indianapolis against Kansas City. Did I text you? Or I may have actually put it on this Facebook.com. Have you heard of this website?
Yes.
I think I put it. I think I posted. Yeah, I know the score's 41-38, and they're probably going to wind up winning, but I'm still not a buyer in the Colts. On the Colts, and you know from doing the show with me throughout the entire year that I've typically been down on Indianapolis more than most people. I basically think it's Andrew Luck and not a lot else. But it's funny what 5 days. It's funny what 5 days of thinking can do to a man, and an upset in the other part of the bracket. We'll talk about San Diego in a little bit, but them beating the Bengals it did shift the matchups, and the Colts went from possibly playing the Broncos to now the Patriots, and that's a big win for Indianapolis. Because I'm here to tell you something about this New England team. It's Tom Brady and not a lot else. I think these teams are very evenly matched up, and I think the Colts got a real good draw here. They're what we call a high-variance team. We've used that term all year long with this team. Look at what they did against the NFC West. They beat the Niners, but then they got blown out by the Rams and blown out by the Cardinals. They've beaten the Broncos, but they've lost to the Dolphins. They went to Kansas City during the regular season, won big. They got blown out at Cincinnati. So this is a high-variance team, one of the hardest teams to predict. So that being said, there's probably two likely outcomes here this week against New England. One is they get absolutely hammered like they did last year in Foxborough. I think they lost 50-something to 20-something. It wasn't close. It was probably the worst game Luck has played in 2 years. Or they just win the game straight up, that being Indianapolis. Rick Morris, I am going out on a limb here. I am taking the points, which isn't what I'm taking a limb, but I think the Colts may win this game straight up.
Wow, I got to tell you, and this is where, again, you and I always take great pains not to share too much information beforehand about what we're going to say, because I like to be able to react to things spontaneously. It always works the best for us. So it's always funny whenever we come to conclusions that other people probably may not be coming to, but we just both happen to share, as is the case here, because I told you I really struggled with all four of the numbers this week in terms of looking at it. But in this one here, I'm on the Colts because, again, I think they can win outright. And the reasoning is very similar to what you said, because New England, you look at, again, primarily their losses on defense right now, and I think that's what makes the yardage statistics I quoted earlier a little bit deceiving, much like how New Orleans, they might have been second in terms of stopping the pass with Kenny Vaccaro in there. Without him, throw that out the window. They're probably middle of the pack without him. New England, they're toward the bottom of the league, regardless, defensively, regardless of what the numbers show, because you take all the guys out of the lineup, guys that were in there for part of the season, Wilfork and Mayo and the rest of them, and the names of the guys that are getting plugged in some cases, guys that are getting signed off the waiver wire and plugged in there. This is one of the finest coaching jobs Bill Belichick has done, but when they were winning the Super Bowls, it was with a combination of high-level talent and the coaching. And increasingly right now, you are left with just the coaching and Tom Brady. And that may not be enough. I will tell you, it won't be enough if they're playing Denver the week after. It may be enough to limp past Indianapolis, and I kind of agree with you there. If this is a nail-biter, I think it may very likely go to the Colts because, like you said, high-variance team. They've beaten some great teams this year and done so on the road. They're relatively road-tested for a young team. And, again, this is a circumstance where, and I've been saying all year long, I think, again, Trent Richardson, maybe I'm stubborn, I think he's getting a bum rap here. I think it's just taking a while to activate this offense. No. Listen, it would not surprise me if he was one of the keys to victory Saturday night. This is a real clip and save that I'm putting out there. I understand I'm sticking my neck out.
I've heard it all now.
But Trent Richardson could get 100 yards on his defense. He could. You may see it Saturday night. I'll expect an apology on this point next week if he does.
Well, and I'll be the first to give it to you. I'll tell you, there's a lot of reasons that there's a lot of reasons I'm looking to take Indianapolis this week. Trent Richardson is not among them. But
okay,
let's take a look. You talk about close games. Both of these teams have excelled in close games this year. Now the Colts, with luck the last 2 years, have just been downright ridiculous. 14-2 in games decided by 7 points or less. eventually that number is going to regress. Look, I thought the Colts were not going to make the playoffs this year. They proved me wrong. They matched last year's 11-win total against all odds. It is a testament to luck and luck solely. Both of these defenses I don't think are very good. I think this is going to end up being a high-scoring game. But let me destroy the Belichick-Brady mythology a little bit, shall I?
Okay.
First off, 7 of their 12 wins this year were one-score games. This team did very well in close games. Their record could have been a lot worse than 12-4. This is not the same dominant team, New England team, as we're accustomed to seeing. Now,
right.
Everyone's always like, oh, Brady in the playoffs, you got to love him. Do you? We've talked about this before on the show. I know we have. I think it was last year. It may have even been going back to the year before that in the playoffs with New England. Since 2007, the AFC title game, when Phillip Rivers, certainly evoked memories of our forefathers on D-Day, giving one of the most courageous performances I've ever seen on a football field.
Should have given way to Billy Volek, but go ahead.
Okay. Since that time, New England has, and that was 2007, just to be clear.
Yeah.
New England has 3 playoff wins. Those 3 playoff wins are against the infamous Tim Tebow-led Denver Broncos, who I think we all agree was, historically speaking, one of the most overachieving teams of all time.
Yep.
The following week at home, they beat the Baltimore Ravens, a game that history probably suggests they should have lost. Baltimore missed a field goal at the end there that I believe would have forced overtime, not won the game. But I thought the Ravens outplayed the Patriots that day. Flacco outplayed Brady, and Baltimore ultimately got its revenge last year in the AFC Championship game. New England's 3rd playoff win was the week before that, beating a Houston team that they'd already humiliated in the regular season. That sounds downright Falcons-esque to me, Rick Morris. 3 playoff wins since 2007. One of them they didn't deserve to win, probably. The other 2 against kind of questionable teams. And I got one more point for you. Bill Barnwell pointed this out. We saw this with Cincinnati last week. Teams that go 8-0 at home during the regular season, like the Patriots did, and the Bengals did as well, those teams tend to fall on their face come playoff time. I wish I had the number here in front of me. I'll throw it back to you, and I'll get you that number. I should have had it I just a minute ago and was going to get it and didn't have it. But none of those teams have reached the Super Bowl since 2006.
Okay.
And I believe 5 of the 8 have been one and done, like not like the Bengals were last week. So I think that would make it 6 of 9. So I'm telling you, the points are the way to go here, certainly, and I would not be surprised if the Indianapolis Colts win this game straight up in what is, I believe, a good matchup for them.
2 quick points that I have before we flip the script to Sunday. You said that Indianapolis won the AFC South thanks primarily to Andrew Luck. Gary Kubiak says hi, so let's not forget the role in Houston's collapse in giving it to them by default. Also, Bill Belichick, I'll be the Cleveland bitter guy. I'll be that guy. Bill Belichick, no Super Bowl victories since Spygate was exposed. So there's that as well.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'll be that guy.
Oh, no.
I'll be that guy, Kyle. But we flip over here to Sunday. It's the Ric Flair Bowl in Carolina at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte on Sunday. The 13-4 49ers at the 12-4 Panthers. Fox with the A-team of Buck, Aikman, and Pam Oliver, the delicious Pam Oliver on this one. Very interesting matchup of these teams offensively and defensively. 49ers 3rd in the league in rushing yardage. Panthers are 2nd at stopping it. Panthers are 11th in rushing yardage. 49ers are 4th at stopping it. So 2 elite run defenses here. In terms of passing, San Francisco, much the same as what I said about Seattle. Don't read in too much to this. Only 20th in passing yards, but going downfield isn't really a big part of what they're trying to do that often. The Panthers are 6th at stopping it, so they're very good there as well. Like while the Panthers 29th in terms of passing yardage, kind of the same story. Cam Newton isn't going downfield as much, largely because he doesn't have too many weapons there. 49ers are 7th at stopping the pass. So defensively, really kind of 2 mirror image, really good defenses. They can stop the run, they can stop the pass. Offenses that are both run-oriented, that really both involve the quarterback an awful lot in the running game. So really, really kind of an interesting one here as far as it goes. The 49ers in this one, it has gone down to a pick after the 49ers laying 2.5 at the open here. And again, my pick is going to be where, as I understand it, Ric Flair's true sympathies lie, and that's not with his hometown team. I said San Francisco to win last week in Green Bay. I like San Francisco to win this one year. I know it's Eastern time zone, and again, the 49ers 3-0 in Eastern time zone this year, albeit that was Jacksonville, Washington, and Tampa Bay. But they've shown they can do it, and I like them in this spot on Sunday to give us the dream NFC championship game in Seattle and San Francisco.
I hadn't even thought of that West Coast thing. Granted, it didn't affect San Diego last week either, so maybe that's not as what it used to be. I'll try to make this quick. I know we're running a little low on time. We still have another game to go. I did want to point out, though, going back to that last game, the stat I quoted about 8-0 teams that go 8-0 straight up in the regular season. Five of the eight have been one and done since 2006.
Wow. Okay.
So again, history on the Patriots side there. You want to talk about history not being on a team's side, Rick Morris.
Yeah.
I told you off air I had 2 picks. I've already given away one of them, was Indianapolis this week. And I told you that I was going to need some convincing if I was going to make it 3, and it's this game. You like San Francisco. You liked them big last week. I took Green Bay. That was not a slight on San Francisco. You know my feelings on road favorites, and I thought they got kind of a bad draw going to frigid Green Bay. But, Colin Kaepernick outplayed Aaron Rodgers, which I did not expect. So that was not a slight at all on San Francisco going against them last week. It was more of I thought Green Bay would be a little bit better, and they weren't. I also said last week that no matter who played Carolina this week, they would go in and win. However, we have a problem here, Rick Morris. You talk about the road favorite situation. There have only been 5 road favorites in the history of the divisional round.
Okay.
None of them have advanced.
Whoa.
None of them. And not only that, none of them have covered either, which you'd expect because all the lines have been 3 points or less. The last one, ironically enough, the 49ers were the home dog, beat New Orleans in the game that, will forever be used to justify Alex Smith's spot in the league.
Right.
So we have that. The road favorite situation has me not liking San Francisco there, and I know it has been bet down to a pick since that time, since the line opened. But then there's the fact that these teams played in the regular season, and Carolina won in San Francisco, held them to 9 points. So that's, not exactly very encouraging if I'm a 49ers fan. And then there's the fact that despite 72% of the weight of all bets in this game being on San Francisco, the line's coming down, which tells me the big money bets are on Carolina.
Right.
I can't play this game. No way. I really understand that on paper the 49ers look like the better team. Last week I said no matter who plays Carolina, they're going to go in and win. No thanks, though, man. I'm telling you, Carolina's going to be a motivated team, and not just because of the nature boy.
Although that slight is certainly going to have something to do with it, I'm sure. That'll be part of Riverboat Ron's pregame speech. Remember the nature boy. But, no, in terms of looking at this here, I really think, again, and I understand everything you're saying, and I understand that, it maybe seems a little bit too obvious to go on San Francisco. I will just tell you, I shied away last week because it seemed too obvious to go on Cincinnati, and I was wrong. I outthought myself. I'm not going to do that again. This is a spot where I'm going to take San Francisco to cover. I understand how many things are wrong with that particular statement, from Eastern time zone to everything you said about road favorites on down. But, it's interesting. I really respect your reasoning for not wanting to go on this. That takes us to the late game Sunday. The one that really might be kind of anticlimactic when you look at the other games this weekend, or maybe not, based on how they played this season.
I don't think so.
Chargers. Okay, the 10-7 Chargers of the 13-3 Broncos. Nance, Sims, and Wolfson, the CBS A team on this one. As far as how these teams stack up, the Chargers are 13th in the league running the ball. The Broncos are tied for 7th at stopping it, a little better than I thought they were when I went to look that up. The Broncos, meanwhile, 15th at running the ball. So the Chargers are actually marginally better in terms of yardage. The Chargers are 12th at stopping the run. Passing, this is where it really kind of shows you that the Chargers are kind of like the Broncos mini-me. When you look at the passing and stopping the pass. Chargers are 4th passing the ball in terms of yardage. The Broncos are 27th at stopping it. The Broncos, of course, are 1st in passing the ball, and the Chargers are 29th at stopping it. I've been trying to get a handle here on San Diego coming in. They seemed like a team that was really hard for me to get a grasp on, and I guess really looking at them as sort of like the poor man's Denver Broncos at this point in time is not a bad way of looking at it. If Phillip Rivers had a few more weapons there, like Peyton Manning does, it might be a different story. He's really only got Allen and Gates that are a huge threat. Woodhead out of the backfield, a little bit of a threat as far as dumping the ball. Peyton Manning has threats pretty much all over the place. Denver is laying 9.5 here, down from 10.5 at the open. Here's my reasoning on this. You're likely to find it faulty, but here goes. Coming off of losing to Baltimore in this spot last year, coming off of the 2 very competitive regular season games, one of which they lost, the other one where they didn't cover. And all I remember about that game is I think they were double-digit favorites. And you and I, for whatever reason, were both on San Diego in that spot. We both liked them to cover. And in that first game, they really made them squirm. So because of that, because of the kind of wake-up calls that they've had already, I think Denver comes out with one of their best performances of the season. I'm not going to say they obliterate them, but I think they're going to cover the 9.5.
I completely disagree.
I anticipated as much, yes.
San Diego is my second recommended play, and boy, do I love them.
Really? Okay.
You're telling me I get this many points to play with in a division game, 3rd matchup of the year? San Diego, there hasn't been that much of an adjustment from the second regular season meeting when San Diego came in here and won outright, outplayed the Broncos. That was no fluke. They just outplayed them in Denver. San Diego is unique, and I'm telling you, at the end of last week, I thought maybe the Colts were kind of that fluky, get hot at the right time team. No one sees it coming. Next thing you know, they're in the Super Bowl. I think it might be San Diego, Ricky. I think the San Diego Chargers may be onto something. Now, I'm no Johnny-come-lately with this team. Let's be clear. Mid-season, I said against all odds this team would make the playoffs, and they did. And you can't evaluate this team, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, the same way anymore because they're much improved. They held Denver to their 2 lowest point totals this year, keep in mind, including a low the last time they met in Denver, held them to 20 points. And all I heard going into that game was San Diego's got the worst pass defense in the league, which was true, but they're much improved there. They've also discovered running the football. They have set a season high in rush yardage 3 times in the last 5 weeks. They've averaged 170 yards on the ground over that time. Phillip Rivers only threw the ball 16 times last week, and all they did was go into Cincinnati and win. And we probably don't have enough time to rip on Cincinnati. We'll have to save that for the year-end show, because trust me, I got a lot of ripping to do on Cincinnati after that jut of a performance. And I've said this before in the program, Ricky, and I'm going to say it again. San Diego has only played one bad game all year. It was that weird game against Oakland back in, I believe, week 5. It was the latest start time in the history of the league because of conflict with the MLB playoffs. They turned it over a bunch of times. They lost by 10 points. Other than that, they have not lost by more than 8 points in any game this year. Give me the points, and I'm going to tell you something right now. San Diego may very well go in and win this game.
Well, that's a clip and save on par with what I said about Trent Richardson.
San Diego may go in and win this game. I got something for you. You know how I love to find this stuff, how I spend all afternoon digging for this. I mentioned this on the show before, and you laughed at me, I think, when I brought it up. Going back to New Orleans when they won the Super Bowl, I don't know how many years, I think it's like the last 3 or maybe it's the last 4. I don't know. It's either 3 or 4, but the last 3 or 4 years in the NFL, the road team in Philadelphia home opener, that's the Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles home opener, the road team in that game has won the Super Bowl every year since New Orleans did. Guess who opened the year in Philadelphia? Guess who opened the year in Philadelphia this year? Guess who was the road team in their home opener? It was the Chargers. My God, destiny is on their side, Rick Morris.
Well,
I love this. I love this yelling Phillip Rivers, by the way. This guy, he just throws on the bolo tie and he just starts screaming at everybody 3 hours. I love the Phillip Rivers.
I think you're overreacting to them playing Andy Dalton last week and getting the game bequeathed to them.
Denver.
Yeah, okay. They did, and they've proven they can match up, fairly well with them. The one thing I will say to support you in all of this is their success, as you said, running the ball against Cincinnati, but running the ball last time against Denver, and what that did was, and we talked about this. We talked about this with the Philadelphia-New Orleans game last week. The Eagles weren't able to do it, but they asserted their will. San Diego did, and with the run, threw Peyton Manning and that offense out of rhythm. And given Peyton Manning's playoff record, which I know that my senior editor, Jason Jones, has tried to excuse on Facebook. By the way, again, in terms of that situation, well, let's talk about that for a second. Yeah, if Peyton Manning loses this game here, it will be a big ding on his legacy, no question about that. By the way, speaking of which, this is going to call for a Facebook poll. We're going to have to put this to a vote on what more people are willing to co-sign on. Me saying Trent Richardson gets 100 yards this week, or you saying that San Diego could win the game outright. So we'll have to see who backs who on that one there. Neither one of us may get a lot of backing. There will probably be a lot of neither votes for that. But I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, you know the kind of people who comment on Facebook: lack of education, lack of class. Quite frankly, lack of anything. I see a lot of location. When I see comments on the internet, the location is the public library more often than not.
Well, not every corner of cyberspace is as well organized as the other ones, which, by the way, side note, I understand that Vince McMahon has hired a technology expert for the launch of the WWE Network. Unfortunately, it's Kathleen Sebelius, so good luck with that. But as far as it goes, and looking at this game here, I understand that it's risky, too, because I'm conceding some of the things you're conceding about this game. And I'm more or less just laying it off on after what happened last year, after the previous two games. Kind of the same thing of where San Diego is not going to sneak up on them as they otherwise might. They have the Broncos' full attention, and I guess I'm just putting more credence about what that's worth than you are.
Oh, they've got their attention, and they should. I'm telling you, this was not a good matchup for Denver at all to draw. I think the flipping of the matchups here, because the 6 seed won, benefits both underdogs, and that's why I'm going with them. By the way, we haven't even mentioned the Mike McCoy factor for San Diego. He was Denver's former offensive coordinator. Also, since 2005, I got more stats for you. This should actually scare Seattle, too. Since 2005, 6 seeds, 6-2, straight up against number 1 seeds in the divisional round.
Wow. I wouldn't have believed that. I love the points. I absolutely love the points, and I'm telling you, you know what? I'll text you before the game. Maybe you can tweet this out if it happens. We'll give a little spoiler for anyone who's listening to this right now and gets a chance to listen to this before the games. I will tweet you, or I won't tweet you. I'll just text you probably, and you can tweet everyone else. If I decide to play San Diego on the money line in this game, because depending on what happens the rest of the weekend, I may fire on them as a long shot on the money line. I know I picked Denver to win the AFC. I'm sticking with it, but I'm telling you, this San Diego right now is tough. What might the money line be? If the point spread's 9.5, what do you think that might translate to?
Let me take a look here. I can get that answer for you.
All right, well, while you're doing that, because we're almost at the end, I just need to sum up here. We'll get that from you here at the end. My picks for this week, Seattle, Indianapolis, San Francisco, and Denver. Kyle's 2 recommended picks are Indianapolis and San Diego. So we both agree on Indianapolis, but I'm too gutless to make any of mine anything more than a standard pick. I already said I'm retiring for the year on my lock picks, having hit the last 9 to just squeeze to weasel into profitability as I did in the wild card round there. So here we are almost at the very, very end here in terms of seconds. Kyle, did you find that yet?
Yep, plus 305 on the money line.
Plus 305. Could make a juicy bet for you. We shall see. One way or another, we'll be talking about it next week with our very, very wild predictions that we made this week. A pleasure as always, my man. We'll catch up for Championship Sunday next week.
Talk to you then, Ricky.
Thanks, pal.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and the Periodic Table of Elements.